I found myself just thinking about death all the time and feeling not happy about it is like the world's biggest understatement, just kind of terrified. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, Zach, but unlike a lot of people, I think it wasn't the dying part that was scary to me. It was the being dead part.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. It's probably pretty obvious at this point that I missed last week, and I want to be upfront about why that happened. I was on a retreat 2 weeks ago, like I had mentioned, and I came back a little more sideways than I expected. If you've ever been on a meditation retreat, you might have some sense of what re-entry feels like. That weird disorientation of coming back to regular life after living in kind of an intentional simplicity for a while. This was that, but with an added layer. This retreat was called an Enlightenment Intensive, and it's very different stylistically than a meditation retreat, and also aptly has the word intense in it. The format involves sitting across from a stranger, making strong eye contact, and taking turns answering the question, who am I? Or some variation of that. 5 minutes each, back and forth for 40 minutes. No crosstalk, no head nods, no response, no acknowledgement whatsoever. Just open, uninterrupted speaking. I did that with over 30 people across more than 50 conversations in the course of about 5 days. Coming out of that and trying to have a normal conversation felt genuinely strange, like I'd been rewired slightly and couldn't quite figure out how to plug back in. It took longer than I thought to feel like myself again. Honestly, I still don't feel like myself. So that's where I was, that's where I am. And I'm glad I went, but it was also quite possibly one of the strangest experiences I've ever been a part of. And I'm really glad to be back home. But May has also just been kind of a heavy month in ways I'll speak more about at the end of the episode. Stick around for that if you're up for it, but first, we need to get into this week's call. It's almost eerie the way that the caller and I have been on very similar journeys. Same length of time, same rabbit holes, same curiosities about psychedelics, about consciousness, about what any of this actually means. They've read books from some of the same people, asked some of the same questions, landed in some of the same uncomfortable places. The thing that makes it a little uncanny is that we're about 4 decades apart. They're 79. They lost a spouse. They've had a cancer diagnosis. They've been sitting with this stuff from a place in life that I haven't reached yet. And somehow we ended up in the same place anyway, asking the same things, holding the same kind of open-handed uncertainty about all of it. This one lands more in the philosophical space, which hopefully is a good place to jump back in after a heavier May. Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Well, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this.
Good. Well, thank you for having me.
We've exchanged a couple emails, so I don't know a ton about you. So it's like this weird middle ground of 98% of the people that I talk to on these anonymous calls, I have no idea who they are and just get like a little snippet in the application. There's a couple people that I've spoken to that have been people that I know, but, you know, continue to exist under the anonymous, whatever. They're anonymous, but I know who they are. And we've exchanged a little bit, but I still don't know a ton about you. So I am excited to learn more and to talk to you. So maybe briefly, you can just let me and the audience know why you were even interested in doing a call like this. It's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about. It's a topic that a lot of people shy away from. And you reached out to me in wanting to do this. So yeah, what inspired you? What makes this an interesting topic for you?
Well, Zach, I have spent the last, 3 years, I guess, exploring every single solitary nook and cranny about death for this book that's about to come out. And that whole project was initiated, well, I guess the most recent spurring of that was the fact that I will be 79 freaking years old next month.
Nice. Congratulations.
Not nice. Oh, God.
Hey, there's a lot of people that don't get to live that long, right?
I mean, you're right. But oh my God, I'm not happy about it. I'm just not happy
I
about
get
it.
it. Yeah, totally.
So I've had, I guess the kind of farther back initiation of that whole thing, besides my age, is that, well, it's been 26 years ago now that my husband died.
Okay.
And then my mother, so that was my first sort of very, very, very personal experience. He was home when he died, and, it was a really upfront, close experience, which I'd never had before. And then my mother died in, don't tell me, 2004. And that was a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah. Yeah, those are two big deaths and two very different deaths.
Yes, exactly. And the quality of those relationships is very, very different. But so I sort of, came at the topic from opposite poles. Then in 2014, I had a breast cancer diagnosis.
Okay.
And that kind of brings you smack frickin' in the face with the whole thing. So it was just kind of, I found myself just thinking about it all the time, and thinking about death all the time, and feeling not happy about it is like the world's biggest understatement. Just kind of terrified, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, Zach, but unlike a lot of people, I think it wasn't the dying part that was scary to me; it was the being dead part.
Yeah.
And so that started this whole then exploration again that culminated in this book.
Well, the good news is, I don't know if this is good news. I think it's just news maybe, is that, you're like in similar company. But yeah, what you just said is exactly kind of why I went on this journey and started this about 3 years ago, was because I was really afraid of death, of after and that. And so I am very excited to talk to you. You have so many things that you kind of laid out there, but it seems like we've both kind of been on a little bit of a journey exploring this topic and trying to relate to it as people who have been, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like petrified and like very fearful of it. And so I think we'll have a really interesting conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you'll tell me some of yours.
You're always welcome to shoot questions back at me. I was just like,
okay, cool.
There's a chance that they get removed from the final edit, because sometimes I'm like, nobody wants to hear from me, or I've already told this before, but it's part of the conversation. So if you ever want to throw questions back at me, you can do that. But maybe before we kind of get into the full kind of heart of the conversation, we can get to know you a little bit, obviously keeping the anonymity and everything. So maybe you can let me know where you're calling from, where you live, like city, state, and then your favorite book and why.
Ooh, so I'm calling from Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, we're neighbors of some sort.
Blue sky day.
I know, it's very weird.
Not raining.
After a couple of very rainy
weird.
days.
And I have a dog who's afraid of the rain, so he's a very happy boy today.
Yes, yeah.
So, yes, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sorry, I already forgot the second half of that question.
Your favorite book and why?
Oh, my favorite book. Okay. So this might be sort of arcane, but there's a writer, W.G. Sebald, Sebald. He was German. He died young in a car accident. And he's written, I think, 3 or 4 books, and I love every one of them. But I think my favorite is called The Emigrants. And the reason I love him so much is I'm kind of a less is more person, and I react really strongly to reading anything that sort of spoon feeds me information or, I always feel like that kind of writer does not respect me as a reader enough to, make connections on my own. And Sebald, he grew up in Germany. He was born, I think, in the mid-40s. And as a teenager, started asking questions about his family's role in the Holocaust, and was very frustrated with the answers. And he ended up moving to England. And the books he wrote, I'm putting this in air quotes, they're about the Holocaust, but he never mentions it at all.
Okay.
At all, never once. But the sense of how, I have this belief that everything on either extreme end of really horrible or really amazing is sort of unspeakable. That words kind of cheapen the things at the very extreme ends of things. And he has this kind of amazingly subtle way of bringing up all this incredible feeling without, just a beautifully light touch. It's just gorgeous. I don't know how he did it. And it's amazing, and I think he's a god.
That's awesome. I
So
feel
there you
like
go.
in some ways you, in that last statement of like in the really, really bad and in the really, really good, it's kind of hard to put words to it. And I feel like in some ways you're describing that about this author, right? Like this is just this like
Yes.
beautiful author and it's so hard to describe. And I'll stop rambling now, and I can ask you, what do you think happens when we die?
Yeah, and if you'd asked me that 3 or 4 years ago, I would have had a very pat answer. And now my answer is, who fucking knows? Because I think one of the things that's happened to me, first of all, because of all the sort of rabbit holes I went down exploring the subject, and also because I think as I've gotten older, some of my sort of sharper edges have been worn down. I'm just in this kind of place of, the way I'm thinking about it is of don't know mind. So,
and that's okay.
I'm inclined to just throw up my hands and say, I don't know. Just about a ton of things. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a funny place to be because I have been a person in my life that sort of, I'm from New York. What can I say? had a kind of, that kind of, I don't know, hard edge to me and a certain kind of a brattiness. I don't know what it is. But we go back to the source. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I mean, my whole thing has always been, and why I started this, and I think kind of like you just said, 3 years ago, when, it was nothing happens. And I would say still that's probably where I land. But I think the other thing that you just presented is, if there's anything that I found in this journey over the past couple of years that, as I've kind of explored and, in depth, but also about consciousness and kind of going all these kind of philosophical paths, because there's a lot of big questions that come along with asking, what do you think happens when we die? And so the source is probably the only other thing that I've really come across that really kind of makes sense to me. But I think it still, to some extent, is possibly not any different than nothing happens, because I don't think I would exist in that source either. I don't think I'd have awareness. And so is that really different than nothing happening? I mean, if we start parsing it out, maybe, but ultimately to me, Zach, that is here today talking right now, I don't know if there's really a difference between those two. And I don't know if I've actually ever said that out loud. But
that's interesting, yeah.
But do you have a hope? I mean, I think part of it for me too is the fear, the anxiety that has come with this topic. And I think just exploring and talking about it has helped. But do you have like, oh, I hope, this and this and this happens? Or how does that all play together with the fear that you also mentioned, that we kind of both have talked about, this kind of fear and this anxiety around it? So how does that play into this kind of idea around what happens and whatnot?
Well, it's way too, even though, most of the things I say, who knows, too, it's way too far for me to believe that there's any, I don't believe I would have any consciousness. Yeah. That there would be any kind of meanness left,
identity, self.
Or awareness. I'm not going to be, looking down. I don't know. That's way too far for me to travel.
Sounds like a lot of work.
A couple of things. A lot of work. And then how does that work exactly? Am I just am I see-through? I don't get it.
There's a lot of logistics.
There's a lot of logistics that really, I've got questions. But two things that I explored in depth that were surprisingly comforting to me is, one is this whole area of panpsychism.
I know a little bit about it, but you should definitely speak to that if you're willing to.
Sure. So strangely, what I learned was it used to be sort of the predominant theory of mind a couple of centuries ago, which is very interesting to me. But it's basically,
I didn't know that.
It's basically the idea that everything has a consciousness. Everything. It's clear to me that my dog and my cat do. That's clear. That's easy. And there's all this really fascinating research on how plants have consciousness. But even a rock or, a piece of wood or something like that, I know that might sound extreme, but when I let myself, and I mostly believe that. So that feels like, okay, we're in this kind of universe of just a zillion forms of consciousness, and I am one form of consciousness.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing that happened is that another part of these investigations for this project of mine was some psychedelic experiences.
Nice.
And this one in particular with 5-MeO-DMT.
Oh, interesting.
was very trippy, let me tell you. Very, very trippy. And again, almost impossible to put into words. Almost impossible, except to say that I did have such a strong sense of how everything is connected.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I can't exactly tell you why that's comforting, but it sort of is.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's a feeling.
Yeah, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
It's interesting that we have, and again, I don't want to keep on like marrying our stories a little bit, but I've kind of gone down very, very similar pathways. Like, I'm blanking on what the book is called, but it's by Annika Harris about consciousness. And she dives into, I think there's panpsychism, but I think there's also a newer idea around consciousness that is very similar in that kind of ideation of consciousness is the foundation. It's the building block, not matter, and everything exists from it. And I do love this idea that, like you're saying, that it's essentially that we are all different consciousness. Like, we're all different ways that the universe is experiencing itself. Whether it's 8.5 billion people or an animal or a blade of grass. And I will say another book to throw out there. I literally just started it. It just came out, but Michael Pollan has a new book out.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And
I've been listening to his interviews.
What is it called? It's like A World Awakens or something like that. I don't know. I'll put it in the show notes or whatever, and I'll text you after. But it just came out. He starts at this foundational level of, okay, well, we could dive into consciousness at the human level, but that's looking at it the most complex form. So let's dive in at plants. And that's kind of his background and, and everything. And so I think that's going to be really interesting. But one of the visuals that I really liked was, it's almost like a tree, and each leaf is a different consciousness. And so, those come up and, eventually they fall off and new sprout and form and grow. But the universe is kind of like this tree, and all these leaves are the different. There's got to be, what's the plural of consciousness? Is consci? Something like that? I don't know. And then I went into, I haven't done DMT. I'm very, very intrigued by it, but I did one of the psilocybin things that you can do, like the therapy sessions in here. And I had, there's so much of it that I can't even really explain into words. It's just really hard. But I did have some elements of like, I am experiencing memories or these traumas that are not mine. These are not mine. These are things that other people have experienced. And so that kind of, that connectedness. So yeah, it's really interesting that we've journeyed and kind of come to some similar places that give comfort. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. I just talked for a while there. I just threw out a bunch of stuff. So you say some cool stuff now.
Okay, let me say some cool stuff. So first of all, it sounds like to me the way I would hear what your experience was, it's sort of like tapping into the Jungian sort of collective unconscious. Yeah. The collective unconsciousness or consciousness. Right? Yeah. So that's awesome. And well, first of all, let me just make a little tweak here. And because there's a distinction between, just for any listeners that might be wondering, there's a distinction between DMT and 5-MeO-DMT. They're two different things.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm not that cool.
The DMT is... I'm so cool.
You are cool.
I don't know if you've heard about this machine elves phenomenon. These, machine elves are like, oh my God, you should Google it when we get off.
I can't wait.
And that's something that happens more with, and a lot of the time with people that take DMT, and these machine elves like Joe Rogan has on one of his podcasts, he talks about these machine elves, coming up to him like, you're a fucking idiot. You fucking crazy. I hate you.
Oh God. I'm like, I don't know if I need that. I don't need that energy in my life.
Exactly.
I've already got one. I've already got one Zach doing that. I don't need machine elves too.
Anyway, so just another thing that I'm thinking about as you were saying that is that I think sounds so bizarre when I say it out loud. It just sounds so completely wacky, but I'm going to cop to it. And that is that when I think about dying or being dead, I had this vision of, well, first of all, the words that came to me were annihilation
Big
and
word.
what was the other one? Annihilation.
I
And
don't mean like
had
a
this
lot of
vision
letters. I
of,
mean like heavy
no,
word, like big heavy word. I just want to clarify that for
heavy.
the listeners.
It got 10 letters.
Sorry.
That's a big word. And I used to have this vision of kind of floating around in a black universe.
Mm,
Isn't that so bizarre?
yeah.
But just kind of like this bleak, it's really, really weird how I had that vision of just floating in some ultimate black space.
Yeah.
And that just felt so terrifying. And
Yeah, it's no surprise that there's fear.
oh my God. And then I read this, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was something from Nietzsche or something, but this distinction between something and nothing.
Mm.
And how, when I think about, quote unquote, me before I was born, that's nothing. I don't have any, that's scary to think about. That doesn't bring up any fear for me.
Yeah.
So I don't have a picture of a me floating around in some scary place.
Yeah.
It just is nothing.
Yeah.
It's just nothing. And me floating around in a black universe is something. So if I just remember that it was nothing before I was born, it's probably going to be nothing after I die in terms of my consciousness.
Yeah.
There's something that feels a little bit less terrifying about that to me.
That's interesting. The one that got me, I think it was Alan Watts. He was talking about how we can't really even comprehend nothing. And this is not how he describes it. He's, way more eloquent and, wonderful and amazing. But it's, it's not, oh, there's an apple and then I take it away and now there's no apple. That's nothing. He's speaking to it's, nothing is as very much as like infinity. They are two things that our brains just can't understand. And so that's one that's always brought me some peace too of, well, I can't really comprehend nothing. Like that's just not something that we can really, it's not tangible, know? So I think that always helps. I am curious about, so you had these two big losses, which seemed like they were a bit ago. And then 3 years ago, you started on this journey of like really exploring. And so what was that process like? Or like what, and now I feel like I'm just cheating and like stealing the questions that people ask me all the time of like, well, what happened? Why did you want to start? Like, what made you jump into this and start talking about death? And so I'm just stealing kind of questions that people ask me. But, what was the impetus? What really pushed you into, I want to really dive into this?
Well, it's much more interesting to ask a 35-year-old.
I don't know.
That question than it is to ask somebody that's in their late 70s.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, death is right out there at the end of my arm, so, and at 30, when I was 35, I just never, it was just not even a consideration. So
sounds like one of us was smarter.
But I think,
and I'm not saying it's me for sure, just to be clear.
Also, no, I was more clueless. I don't know. But I think, like I said, in 2014, I had a breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that's a real kind of, that'll shake the bejesus out of you.
Absolutely.
And I've been always very healthy. I am very healthy. I'm fine now and I'm really healthy. I really don't have any physical problems. I went through that whole thing just fine, but it's kind of like, oh, me? This is,
yeah.
you mean me? This is happening to me? It was a real kind of strange slap in the face.
Yeah, very surreal.
So I think that very, very surreal. So I think that was probably where the seeds got planted. And then, like I say, it's just getting older. And I think, it seems to be the case that especially as we get older, aging sort of happens not in a sort of straight line, but that there are points at which there are these kind of dramatic aging shifts. And so, I've been through a couple of those and, I hardly recognize, first of all, I am still sure that I'm 16 years old. Internally, that's how old I feel, 16. Yeah. So I look in the mirror, it's like, who the?
I was going to say, the mirror starts getting to be a really weird place.
It's so weird. And I'm like, I don't know how my mother's arms got on my skin got on my arms. I don't know how that happened. So it just became inescapable.
Yeah.
It's inescapable. This is like,
I would say very similarly, like I feel like when it grabs hold, it's really hard to escape. And mine, I feel like a midlife crisis. But again, in some ways, kind of similarly, My partner, about a year after I started on this journey, having these kind of like panic attacks or existential attacks, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's,
and so young.
yeah, very young. And so I can't say that I understand what you went through, but I can understand maybe a little bit more than someone who hasn't been around someone who is fighting.
Of course.
And so, yeah,
gosh,
it is, it's hard to say because it's just a giant blanket statement, right? But I do think once death touches you in a way, and that could be, you know, me just being a math person and doing some rudimentary calculations on how much time I had left. Or, you know, I've talked to people who have lost people, who have battled diseases, or illnesses, diseases, all that stuff, people who are doing that currently. And it's like, once it kind of hits you, I feel like it really does just really shift how you look at the world.
Yeah.
It becomes really hard it's almost like now everything's changed.
Absolutely. And it's almost impossible to unknow that, right? And
my fear is that I will. Because in some ways I don't want to go back.
I don't think there's any risk of that.
I don't think there is any going back, but you know, I don't know. I've seen The Matrix. They might be able to push me back into the Matrix or something. I don't know. Take the different pill or something. Yeah, something's going to happen. I'm a little worried about that because as hard as this is, you know, I feel like I'm living much more like me, who I really want to be. I don't know if that's been true for you too, but yeah, I don't think you can go back.
I don't think so. I mean, I do think that there's sort of what do I want to say? Sort of an adjustment to that I would say is that I do think sometimes we need a kind of creative denial, but I think of that more as a sort of conscious mechanism, not an unconscious mechanism. So, you know, because none of us knows, you know, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, you know, who knows when when we're going to die, we just don't know. And so it takes a kind of, like I say, kind of conscious denial to get up every day and believe that believe that you can make the plans to have that trip next September, or even to make plans for Saturday night. You know, it takes a kind of suspension of the sort of fickle finger of fate, you know.
And maybe that is the shift. So, like you're kind of parsing over it of, it's the conscious effort or conscious knowledge or awareness that you kind of have to put that down versus being unconscious to it, which I think is how a lot of the world lives for valid reasons. And obviously, you know, there's mechanisms that want us to exist that way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that is what happens in those moments where you kind of wake up. It's that you kind of break through that barrier of, okay, I'm aware of this now, but I still kind of have to do this weird dance now where I know I could get hit by a bus, but I can't just spend all my money today and not worry about my future. Yeah, that's really interesting. With this idea of I don't know, where does that put you with how you feel about death right now? Well,
I mean, so
easy question.
Yeah, so easy, so easy. I can, you know. Yes, I don't know is the predominant of my mindset. I really don't think that there's a person in the clouds that's, you know, going to send me to heaven or hell. So I don't think that. My daughter asked me the other day if I thought that the universe if I believed that there was a benevolent force in the universe. And I said I didn't know, but it would be nice. She's
probably getting so tired of you saying I don't know. It's like, just know something, damn it. Just know something.
Exactly. I know how to cook. Okay.
There we go.
But so okay, let me back this up.
Yeah, sorry.
So Ram Dass, the wonderful Ram Dass.
Yeah.
From all accounts, everything I've read, and believe me, I read a lot, he was completely unafraid of dying. And what he said about that was that it was when he released his ego, because it's ego that has a fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
And once you release your ego, there's no fear of dying. And from that, what I extrapolated from that was that our ego is like, this is who I am. This is this person in this body.
Yeah.
with these thoughts, and these opinions.
Yeah.
But once you kind of let go of that and see yourself as just part of the elegant universe, that there's nothing to be afraid of. And so I can't say that I 100% believe that, but sure, seems possible to me.
Yeah.
And when I consider that seems possible to me, that does blunt my fear response. And the other thing that happened for me is that in this whole exploration that I went on for that couple of years, is that I realized, might sound strange, Zach, but it's much more for me about sadness. And that is, I'm going to be so sad I have a grandson who I adore, and I'm not going to be around to see what happens in his life.
Yeah.
And that kills me.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel so sad about that. And there's a way in which sad seems easier than scared.
It's very interesting because we have so many parallels here, because when then people ask me about what are you most afraid of? And it's essentially, I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't have a grandkid, but I have a nephew, but I have family and stuff. And that's one of the things that I say is that I won't be able to experience anything anymore. That's really, and it's all I know is experiencing something. Because, my first memory is me remembering an experience. But I do think you're right that fear is this very, volatile, very difficult emotion. And I think part of it is because fear, I think, holds a lot. I think it holds that sadness. It holds so many elements. And it's almost like, I don't know, I've brought this up before, and I don't think it was in relationship to this, but fear is almost like the Wizard of Oz, I think. Because it's the dude behind the curtain that's like, oh yeah, it's actually, this fear has actually been sadness or anger or whatever. It's fear is kind of the mask of all these things.
Yeah, it's I'm going to get this backwards, but it's kind of like fear is the wolf in sheep's clothing, or is it the sheep? It's either the wolf or the sheep, but it's it's the outward presentation, and it's not I think
it's the sheep's clothing is what we're saying, right?
Okay, there you go.
I think that's what we're saying. But yeah, I might have to. I need to write down a diagram or something.
Exactly, I might have to draw that to make it clear. But I also think that I know personally for me that fear has been a much more sort of a deeper groove. Mm-hmm. So it's an emotion that I'm more familiar. I've had more practice in. And sadness is something I haven't allowed as much in my life. It's that I've kept it at bay. And so I'm putting again in air quotes, I've been kind of better at fear.
Yeah. It's a known enemy in some ways.
Yes, exactly. So it's sort of my go-to.
Yeah.
So as I've sort of looked at all this, is like, oh my gosh, the sadness is really what's underlying a lot of this fear. I mean, it's not that I'm done with feeling afraid. I'm not, but it's been helpful to know that that's there. The sadness is kind of underneath the fear.
Yeah, totally. The other one that came up for me when you were mentioning Ram Dass, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, because as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I guess that could come off kind of callous, but it was definitely meant with really great intent. It was someone that I had on the podcast very early on, before I was doing the anonymous format, and she wrote me a long response, but there was one thing that she had in there that I have not forgotten. She basically said, and I think it goes right into this conversation about ego and the stories that we tell ourselves. And that is a whole nother path that I'm going down on my meditation journey into non-dualism and all that kind of stuff. But she just kind of very plainly wrote, this fear of death of yours could just be a story that you're telling yourself. Could you just put that down? And I was like, whoa, that's some powerful stuff. But I think to someone that could come off as really callous potentially, or, very, oh, don't feel your emotions. But it hit me so well, because she probably was reading between the lines of what I had been saying in these email letters and whatnot. But email letters, I don't know if I am, I'm 38 years old, email letters, Jesus.
I was going to say, what are you, 80?
I'm working on it. I do tell everybody that I'm almost 40, but really I'm almost 80. But yeah, I think she was reading between the lines and understanding the journey that I was on, and it hit in a really wonderful place for me because yeah, I think it
that's
is
great.
a story to some extent that I
Yeah,
have bought into my entire life. And now it's just trying
yeah,
to figure out a way to kind of let that go. And that's a very
yeah,
hard story to let go of because, you know, it's one that you want to hold on to really tight in a weird
yeah,
way, right? It's kind of like we were just talking about. It's known. It's something that's been
yeah,
there for almost as
yeah,
long as I can remember. And so it's like, okay, hold on to
yeah.
this because
Wow.
it's this weird safety net. But yeah, I think those are the
Right.
two kind of things that came up for me. Cause yeah, Ram Dass, you know, what a genius too. I mean, we've brought up some pretty
Oh
awesome
my
people
God.
in this conversation. It's a
I
hodgepodge
know.
of all
Amazing.
the learnings that I
A
think
hodgepodge.
we have both. I mean, we've been on similar journeys and I love it.
Well, it really sounds like it. Have you do you know about a lot about Terence McKenna?
I don't.
Oh my gosh. You're going to love him so much. Oh my gosh, he's just the most wonderful, delightful. I mean, what do I know? He's dead and I never knew him, but there's a bunch of YouTube videos of him and he's just amazing and
Oh, sweet.
fantastic and incredible. I think you'll, and he does a lot of talking about death. I think you'll really enjoy him.
I feel like we're going to have a very active text thread after this conversation of like, have you checked out this? Have you checked out
Awesome.
this? And here's the book that I'm
Awesome.
reading. So I'm excited to kind of
Fantastic.
like debrief after and get kind of some recommendations
Me
and then,
too.
yeah, continue to help each other on this journey that we're on. I do have
Sounds great.
one last question for you. What's one thing you still want to experience in this lifetime?
Gosh, all my life I've wanted to go to Africa and see the animals before they disappear. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, I hope I live long enough to see my grandson sort of launch into his adult life.
Hmm.
I hope I really hope I live long enough for that.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's
Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful one. I think it's it's an interesting question because you mentioned your age, but by and large, I don't know how old people are that I'm talking to. And it's just, I love it because very much like the book question at the beginning, it's
Yeah.
just kind of like a very, you can't plan for it. And it's just kind of whatever comes
Yeah.
to you. And so I think both of yours are wonderful. And yeah, I just want to thank you for being willing to chat with a complete stranger, to talk to me about death and all of these exciting things that I've been exploring. It's fun to find another person who, in some ways, it's kind of eerie too, of like how similar our paths
Yeah.
have been on this exploration.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you reached out. I'm so glad that you did this and were willing to talk about it. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doc. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're definitely going to stay in touch. Like I said, we're going to have
Okay, good.
a pretty aggressive text conversation after this with all the
Oh,
books
good.
and videos and stuff to help each other along the way. But yeah, thank you. And I hope you have a good rest of your day and
Thank
enjoy
you
the
so
rest
much.
of this sunny weather.
I shall. You too. Take care and thanks again.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Bye.
This caller and I are about 40 years apart and somehow landed in almost exactly the same place, asking the same questions, finding comfort in the same strange corners, still not sure what any of it means. And honestly, I hope I'm still that curious at 79. I hope I'm still doing psychedelics and reading weird books and saying, I don't know, like it's a full answer, because it is. That would feel like a life well lived to me. As I mentioned at the top, May has been a pretty challenging month, and I want to share something I've been holding for a little while now. Dawn passed away. For those of you who don't know, Dawn was a dear friend who I had the honor of interviewing a few times for this podcast, and the last one, which aired a little over a month ago, we recorded a few days before he passed. His family asked me to hold off on saying anything publicly, and I wanted to respect that. I chatted with his wife at the celebration of life, and she told me that the two of them listened to his exit interview together before he passed, and that he was really proud of it. I'm proud of it too. It's one of the most important things I've ever been a part of. And because of all of this, I've been grieving him. And I'll be honest, I didn't fully anticipate this part of what this project would bring into my life. I opened myself up to conversations about death, and in doing so, I've opened myself up to more love, more connection, and yeah, more loss. I don't regret any of it, but I am feeling it. One of the things I kept thinking about on retreat was how much Dawn would have loved to hear about it. He was one of those people where you'd sit down over tea and coffee and just never know where the conversation would go. Philosophy, life, the big stuff. He was so curious, so genuinely interested in everything. He would have had so many questions about the Enlightenment Intensive, about the people I met, about what it all stirred up. I miss that, and I miss him. I'm really glad to be back. I'll see you next Tuesday. When We Die Talks exist because people have stories worth telling, and most of them never get told in a way that lasts. Mnemosyne is my attempt to do something about that. It actually started with a guest from the show, and after his interview, he told me how much it meant to have something he could share with the people in his life. So he didn't have to keep repeating himself, and so nothing got lost over time. I couldn't stop thinking about how many people have a version of that. Honestly, all of us do. All of us have a life worth capturing, and people who love us and would give anything to hear it told. Mnemosyne is a guided conversation with me where we capture someone's life in their own words, where they come from, what made them who they are, and the stories they want people they love to know. The recording is yours, private, personal, something you can share with anyone you want. If someone came to mind just now, even if it was yourself, that's probably worth paying attention to. You can learn more at mnemosyne.com. That's NEMOSENE.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share whatever death has stirred in your life. Listener support truly helps keep this project going. If you'd like to support the podcast, you'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Every bit makes a difference. Until next time, have a good life.